Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Rhode Island Small Business Coalition live forum. Thank you again for joining us this week. We've got a great guest today. Before we dive in with the guest, I just want to remind everyone that we are on Facebook Live, and if you have any questions for our guest, please put them there. The Rhode Island Small Business website, the coalition's website, is rismallbusiness.org, and you can sign up there for the coalition. Any small business is welcome to join, and it's especially important today if you want to go join. We're having an all hands meeting tonight at 5 o'clock over Zoom. So if you'd like to join that 5 o'clock Zoom meeting, please sign up to the Rhode Island Small Business Coalition today at rismallbusiness.org. And so now today's guest, without further ado, it really needs no introduction. It was fantastic to have a U.S. Senator with us today. Welcome, Senator Sheldon Whitehouse.
Why, thank you, David. It's wonderful to be with you. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for being here. I think it's great to have all the members of our CODEL have been eager to be with us, and it's great that you're able to make time for us today. I know how busy things are, especially getting back into in session and everything. So thank you for your time.
Well, very happy to do it. The small business community is really the heart of Rhode Island, and you guys have been a terrific energizer of the small business community as we've had to deal with COVID. So your work is much appreciated, and I'm glad to be on.
Thank you. Well, as you would imagine, a lot of the questions that we have for you today, they come from our members. Our coalition is many hundreds of members across the state of Rhode Island. A lot of them are, related to COVID and things of that nature, and a lot of it is also, SBA questions. It's been a challenging process over the last year or so with the SBA. I think we are all understanding that the SBA was limited, in scope before this, and all of a sudden they had all these new programs to deal with. So let's dive right in with some of these questions. First and foremost, I think our members want to know what's being done to provide some oversight to some of these SBA programs. Some have already passed, they've ended, they've closed, and the results have not been, as successful for Rhode Island businesses as some people would like. How do you see oversight and control of some of these programs?
Well, Chairman Ben Cardin runs the Small Business Committee in the Senate, and he has been looking into and continues to try to oversee these programs through that committee. As everybody will recall, there were some early glitches, particularly when the lines all jammed up, or people who didn't have banking accounts with a bank couldn't get into the system as readily to get access to the EIDL or the PPP loans. Some of it was new, and the SBA had to figure out how to make it work. And in some cases, they needed information from the IRS that the IRS was jammed up and couldn't provide them. So, we've been sending letters to the IRS asking to put more people on to clear those backlogs. So it's really been a question of, as we give them new programs and lots of new money, we then follow up to make sure that the programs are being administered, and we make the adjustments necessary where we can to try to solve the problems as they emerge. When you do something new, you get new problems. But I think by and large, particularly the PPP, to a lesser extent the EIDL, these loan programs have been a real success and a lifesaver. The shuttered venues and the restaurant revitalization have, I think, also been very well-intentioned and have helped a number, particularly the shuttered venues in Rhode Island. On the restaurants, unfortunately, we're tangled up in litigation over the early opening. We tried to offset the problems of smaller businesses, minority-owned businesses, businesses without a lot of banking support by giving them a preferential start in the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. And then, of course, somebody sued and a bunch of lawsuits happened, and the whole thing has been stalled over that. So that's going to, at some point, free up, but that's a little bit in the hand of the lawyers, unfortunately.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. It's been an unfortunate situation. Since my small business is Eat Drink Rhode Island, and I work in that realm, I'm very familiar with a lot of my friends have had that issue, and hopefully it does clear up. I think it
seems to me, though, that we've had a pretty good summer, and that restaurants and hospitality have done pretty well. Hotels have been pretty full, and restaurants have been pretty busy. You're closer to it, David, because you are involved in it literally day to day. What's your take on where the hospitality and restaurant industry have been in Rhode Island through the summer?
Oh, it's been a great summer without a doubt. I mean, it's booming. I mean, the issue mainly has been staffing, unfortunately. That has been a real problem for a lot of the businesses that I work with. I don't know hotels as well, but I would imagine it's probably the same there as well. But yeah, staffing has been a big issue. A lot of places not been able to be open 7 days a week in some cases because of the staffing. But to the SBA's credit, I was going to say the PPP program certainly worked very well in the case of in most restaurants.
Yeah.
While we're on this topic, I'll jump ahead to the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, and you highlighted the main problem that's going on right now. But another part of the problem with that fund is there just wasn't enough. I know there's a push to refill that fund, and maybe that'll solve some of these lawsuit headaches as well. What's your take there? What do you see happening?
It's hard to tell. The $30 billion that was originally appropriated remains to be seen how that plays out. I think that's just at this point TBD, and we are entering the stage of negotiations internally on what the big infrastructure bill is going to look like, the one that we're going to do through the reconciliation process. So it's possible that some money may go to this program. When you're sending money directly to existing programs, it's usually pretty safe bet to pass in reconciliation. It doesn't get tangled up in parliamentary obstacles. So TBD, I guess, is the best I can say right now. But clearly the response to the program sent a very strong signal that this is a worthy program and that the need is very real out there.
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah, I don't want to get too bogged down in restaurants only in this conversation, but yeah, I mean, restaurants.
Since Rhode Island has the best restaurants pound for pound of the entire country, you might as well focus on it.
Thank you for saying it. I'm usually the one saying it like a broken record, but I appreciate someone else saying it. But the margins are so small that the numbers really don't make sense for a lot of small restaurants. They're more pillars of the community than money makers of the community, and so yeah, you could see the real need for that fund, and hopefully that we can see that fund replenished and get out to more places. So thank you for trying to move that forward. The other one,
the other thing I'll say is that I think that a lot of the Rhode Island restaurants have done a really amazing job at transitioning from in-venue service to putting food out the door and having curbside pickup and being able to, move to outdoor sidewalk venues and all of that to make it more accessible. But particularly the takeaway food, a lot of restaurants have had to adapt, and some of them have done very, very well in that adaptation. And we've all adapted along with them. I think there's a different public out there for takeout.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. You're right to say that. I think the public, for the most part, has really gotten behind it and been able to support these places, and that's really key. So the other one that a lot of questions came up on was the shuttered venues. It's been a little problematic for some of the smaller places, for some of the smaller promoters out there. I myself have had a bit of a trouble with it for my events that I promote and produce. I'm still in the appeals process. And it keeps coming up in various SBA conversations with some of our members that there's still plenty of money left in that program. What's going on there? Any insight into what's going on there? Any information you can help us with?
Well, they're not accepting new applications any longer. I think they're looking to see what their existing grants. Rhode Island got a little over $2 million for 9 different facilities. And as you know, with all the venues in Rhode Island, there are obviously plenty more that could be used. It's limited, just so everybody knows, to not-for-profits. So if you're a for-profit venue, then that's a different issue. And we have some pretty good for-profit venues that haven't been able to be served. So I'm hoping that once they've been able to do a reset on what money they have left, they can reopen again. I think they're reluctant to open until they've got a sense of what's left in the kitty after the first round of grants go out and what the chances are for further funding. So that's where we are at the moment. But for those venues that did receive the 2 million, it was, I think, a real lifesaver.
Oh, without a doubt. I think anyone who's receiving funds, and I've received funds in different areas over the last year and a half as well. I mean, it's crucial. I mean,
what was most convenient for you? What was the best program for you?
For myself, the Idle Advance
Yep.
on the federal level, and then on the state level, we had a couple of great programs through Commerce, which was funded by the CARES Act.
Yep.
But yeah, for myself, because I'm a single member, LLC, being small like that, the Idle Advance. I know, as I mentioned before, many of my friends who have restaurants with many employees, PPP was probably the best.
Yeah.
With Idle being the second best.
The last thing I'd mention to you, David, is that, as you mentioned, the state funding, there's another round of state funding that is being distributed more or less now. The General Assembly has asserted itself with regard to the second 1.2 billion. And so while they're sorting out with Governor McKee where all that's going to go, we're in a little bit of a hiatus. So it's really important that Rhode Islanders get their views into their state legislators about where that should go. It is absolutely a priority to support small business for that money. That was congressional intent for it. Direct COVID harms and direct COVID expenditures were, of course, top billing. But right behind that was protecting small business, and everything else was behind that. So whatever the state can do with the 1.2 billion, small business is expected to be a very big focus of that. And that money has not yet flowed through. So that's something to be aware of. We also, in the second round, made sure that we sent money not just to the states, but also to counties and to municipalities. And because Rhode Island doesn't have operating counties, the county money is going to flow through to our municipalities. So all the different municipalities are going to get their own funding, and it's under those same conditions that, like, direct COVID expense and recovery comes first. Small business is right behind that as a top priority. So in addition to whatever we can do with new programs through Congress and refilling existing programs through Congress, we've also pushed out the $1.2 billion and around another $800 million through the municipalities into Rhode Island. And a lot of that can be very local and something that, very local business communities and local business neighborhoods, streets that people love to go and shop and eat on, things like that, can get together and work with your local city council and mayor to try to get support for. So there's money there at the local municipal level and at the state level, and it has not yet been dispersed. So, and it's still being worked on. So this is everybody's chance to be a part of that conversation and try to move that money in a smart way to small business.
No, you're absolutely right. And I want everyone out there to remember the Small Business Coalition is fighting for you on that as well. We had Mayor Alorza and Mayor Grebian. I interviewed them a few weeks ago on different shows, and I'm interviewing Mayor Hopkins from Cranston next week, and we have Speaker Shikarchi in a few weeks after that. So all those folks are going to be here. We want to tell them exactly what we want and hope for as small businesses. So thank you for pointing all that out, Senator. And
those are three good guests to have at this particular time. Well done, David.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Well, it's Jen Ortiz, and behind the scenes there is our booker. She gets out there and gets everyone in and for us to interview. So give her props for that. Okay, so we talked restaurants, SVOG, Idle program we mentioned. Is there do you see any more chance for more programs like this? Maybe not new ones, but replenishing some of these programs, or maybe new ones coming forward?
Yeah, I
think we're at the end of the COVID relief.
I think the likelihood of new ones is pretty slim. The bipartisan infrastructure bill has already been framed out and agreed to. And I don't think there's a lot of room for shifting in that. And that's probably going to pass in more or less the shape that it's in right now. It's kind of it's pretty close to locked in. There may be little details here and there that could be tweaked, but it's pretty close to locked in. And that's going to run in parallel with the big infrastructure bill, what we call the reconciliation bill, that's going to pass through this budget process in the House and in the Senate. And for that, the rules of the Senate parliamentarian, which control what we can do with that type of procedure, really forbid setting up new programs and really focus on sending money to existing programs with as few policy changes as possible, because policy changes tend to blow up the whole allocation. So we're trying to avoid that. It's not a very good way to add new programs. The parliamentarians would probably probably blow it up. So nothing in the immediate. Those are going to be big infrastructure bills. And of course, that will put a lot of money into the Rhode Island economy through infrastructure, through water maintenance and development and improvements, through highway maintenance and improvement, through bridges and kind of traditional infrastructure, as well as things like EV chargers and broadband that are a little bit new to the infrastructure world. And then, of course, just a lot of money into Rhode Island families to support them in the way that they're going. And of course, that puts money in people's pockets and gets them to the corner restaurant because now they got money to spend.
Yeah, I think that's an extremely valuable point that people need to remember, is that, the child tax credit, things of that nature that end up with money into people's pockets. The vast majority of people who get extra cash aren't, putting it into, retirement funds or something. They're spending it in these.
Yeah. This money goes fast into the economy.
Yeah, exactly.
And in the local economy.
Right, exactly. So it's extremely important. While we're talking the infrastructure bill, do you see anything in there that would be beneficial to small businesses? Anything you want to talk about that would be coming Rhode Island's way for that?
Well, I think when you're investing in infrastructure and you're pouring money through those good infrastructure jobs into the economy, that's a lift for the entire small business sector. So we've got $1.5 billion in highway coming to Rhode Island, another $500 million for bridges and mass transit, another $400 million for water, drinking water and wastewater infrastructure, a little bit for the airports, about $45 million, and the EV thing as well. We'll probably try to add to that. That's in the bipartisan bill already. That's what's been agreed to, and we're just waiting to get ready to pass that. So we'll be adding more, obviously, in the reconciliation bill, but most of that is going to be in the form of family support, things like paid medical leave and extending the child tax credit and helping families who need child care during the day to pay for child care. And I think, again, all of that will make a significant difference with money in people's pockets, lifting the economy. And all of that is good news for small business.
Absolutely. Thank you. And making our roads easier to travel, and then airlines, more airlines and more travel to Rhode Island, certainly going to help small business there. So those are great points to make.
Yeah, particularly with people not traveling internationally because of COVID. Travel in the U.S. is up. Rhode Island has been a very popular destination, and I think that's part of the reason you and others have seen a really strong hospitality summer. Yeah,
absolutely right. No, very true. Sticking to the infrastructure question, some of our members were asking if you meet up with our new Commerce Secretary, if you've had conversations and how that's been going.
Yeah, I do from time to time. It's kind of funny to see Gina, coming in, stepping out of the big black Navigator with her security people around her with the thing in their ears and calling her Madam Secretary and all. The last time I saw her in person, she and I and the Secretary of the Interior sat down to have lunch to talk through offshore wind development because the Secretary of the Interior runs the Bureau of Offshore Energy Management, which is where all of these offshore wind facilities get licensed and permitted. And because we did it so well in Rhode Island, got the first steel in the water, got the first electrons on the grid, Gina and I wanted to share our experience with her to try to get BOEM up and running and off the dime. And of course, NOAA, which oversees oceans, has a role in the BOEM process, and that's Gina's baby because NOAA's within commerce. And Janet Coit, our DEM director, who I think most people know and remember fondly, is down there running the fisheries piece, which is a big part of the regulatory side in the offshore energy thing. So the purpose of all that was to try to get glitches and delays out of the permitting system so that we can start getting these offshore energy projects up and going, because that is going to be really big dollars for Rhode Island, for the Rhode Island economy, and help us meet our climate goals as well. So that's a very big deal for Rhode Island, and we had a good lunch, and it was a lot of fun to see her in her new position. She's doing a good job.
That's excellent to hear. Since you mentioned the environment, and you're such a great supporter of our oceans and our ocean economy, but also the environment in general. You've given so many great speeches over the years. Some people view that sometimes as like, it's more headache, more hassle, more any sort of carbon tax or things of that nature. But the flip side of it is it's more opportunities for new business and more opportunities for new technologies. And what do you see there, where small business can make inroads into some of the things that need to be done to help our climate, because they need to be done?
Yeah. Well, at this point, I think it's a safe economic bet supported by a lot of evidence that the transition to a clean energy economy and away from fossil fuel is going to give a big economic lift to the country. And that's for two reasons. One, both solar and wind can now be deployed at a cheaper cost than fossil fuel. So you're not paying more for clean energy, you're actually paying less for clean energy at the meter. And because it's clean, you don't have to deal with all the toxic effects of burning fossil fuel, whether it's bad air quality. It's a bad thing for Rhode Island when you're driving in to work on a hot summer day and the drive time radio is saying, today is a bad air day in Rhode Island. Elderly people and people with breathing difficulties and children should stay inside. Come on, it's a beautiful summer day. Nobody wants to stay inside. And that's because of ozone and because of pollution. And so to be able to clean that up while enjoying cheaper power, while having the big lift from offshore wind, which is going to be, I think, a really significant part of our economy. I think the smart play is to get behind these investments, make Rhode Island a leader, and take advantage of that economic lift that is coming our way as we transition.
Yeah, thank you. That's great to hear. We've got some questions on Facebook, so why don't we jump over to the Facebook? And Ben, I think we've got a question from Diane. There it is. Question from Diane Jennings. It's been great to see funding for shut-in venues and restaurants. What is available for the small retail sector that competes with monopolies such as Amazon?
Yeah, that's going to be a hard thing to deal with. I think the PPP and things like that came through to small businesses helped keep them afloat. But Amazon as a retailer is just a big structural shift for everyone to have to deal with. And I want to congratulate our own David Cicilline on the leadership that he's shown taking on the big monopolies and trying to make sure that small business can be treated fairly. It's kind of a good news, bad news story, but as long as Amazon is going to be out there and providing the services that it does and the deliveries and the prices, looks like it's a good thing that they're coming to Johnston and providing some jobs for Rhode Islanders with a fulfillment center there. But it's going to be really hard. This bricks and mortar versus internet retail is just going to be a recurring problem for us to have to deal with. And I think at the moment, the most significant thing is going after the abuse of monopoly power, because trying to sort out through which small businesses have been, competed unfairly against, and which have been competed fairly against, and which had just bad business judgment, and which got squished by Amazon. All of that is so hard to sort out.
Sure.
But I do think that people, particularly here in Rhode Island, like being able to go to local small businesses, and that hands-on interaction, particularly after people have been isolated and quarantined and so forth, is something that people are yearning for. And, to a certain extent, God bless Amazon. They got a lot of stuff into my house and a lot of other people's houses while everybody was quarantined. But it's not a fair fight between Amazon and the local retailer, and we've got to make sure that Amazon is playing by the rules.
It makes perfect sense. We had Representative Cicilline on a few weeks ago. We've got Congressman Langevin in a couple of weeks and Senator Reid in weeks after that. So I want to thank all of the members of the CODAL for being available for us at small business. I have one last question for you, Senator. This is a pet question of one of our board members, Hugo Adames, but it is extremely important. He brings it up. We all kind of laughed at there goes Hugo again with the daylight savings time question, but he brings this up often, and it is a valuable question, especially as we've seen over the last year and a half, where later hours are great for outdoor dining, things of that nature. Where do you see the change in daylight savings? Is that going to happen?
Well, Marco Rubio of Florida and I have filed a bill to get rid of daylight savings so that we are permanently on the clock that we're on right now. I think that when we're obliged to change our clocks and suddenly it's dark at 4:30 in the afternoon, not great for people coming home from work, not great for kids who need to run around after school, not great if you're trying to attract people to outdoor venues or just the patio in a restaurant. Yes, heaters help, but it's just not as much fun in the dark as it is when it's sunset still. So I'm hoping we just we get rid of that and don't have to do it any longer. I don't see an immediate path to passing that because we're going to be really tied up on getting these two big infrastructure bills through. But once those big bills clear out of Congress and we're looking around for what's next to do, I think Senator Rubio and I are going to be pushing pretty hard to be rid of that. So Hugo, stay with it. I'm working on that.
Well, that's great to hear. Thank you for that, and thank you again for your time today. We really appreciate you taking the time to talk small business with us. Is there anything you want to say before we wrap up?
No, I'll just close. Let me just say that I'm working really hard to try to get some really good climate initiatives into the bill. We have one of the best mapping systems in Rhode Island for what Rhode Island is going to look like if we don't turn this around. And because we're a small state with a lot of coast, it's going to hit us harder than almost any other state on a percentage basis. Maybe Delaware is as bad. But when Warwick Neck is going to turn into Warwick Neck Island, and Barrington is going to be mostly flooded, and Bristol turns into an island, and Papa Squash turns into two little islands off of it. You see these changes that are coming to our coastline, and behind the story of the flooded land that is now Rhode Island are going to be human interest story after human interest story of houses that have been there for generations. We've seen that along the South County coast, houses gone into the sea that people remember their grandparents being in. A lot of coastal infrastructure, a lot of coastal economy. So we've really got to fight very, very hard to try to push back on that problem so that we don't end up being inundated and having the kind of economic hit that comes when you basically lose so much coastal infrastructure, so much coastal property, so much coastal value. And I think we're on the fringes of starting to feel that economic pain. And I really want to get ahead of it because I don't want Rhode Island to have to go through what we're planning for right now at the state level, because we know what's coming if we don't act.
Well, thank you very much for that. That's extremely important. As you listed a bunch of, all the reasons are fantastically important, but
it's not just about saving the ocean mist, but that's part of it.
Right, exactly. And I'm going to give a little plug. I'm a board member of EcoRI News, and EcoRI covers a lot of these stories. So
Yeah,
if you
thank
want
you for that.
yeah, check out the website if you want to read more stories about that. Thank you again, Senator Sheldon Whitehouse. We really appreciate you being here today.
Thanks,
I'm
David.
sure we'll be in touch more as small business issues arise. Thank you.
Take care.
All right. That's another episode of our show. I hope you enjoyed that interview. Like I said, we've got Mayor Hopkins from Cranston in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks after that is Congressman Langevin, and 2 weeks after that is Speaker Shikarchi, and 2 weeks after that is Senator Jack Reed. So we've got a great lineup of guests coming up. We've also got all these guests that we've already talked to that we've recorded the shows. They're still live on Facebook. You can hit the Rhode Island Small Business Coalition Facebook page, find those live videos, watch those interviews with all those guests. If you missed any of this interview with Senator Whitehouse, you can watch that back later as well. And please hit rismallbusiness.org, sign up for the coalition, and join us. Thank you again.